Hello and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Prateek and I'll be taking up the news today discussion for 30th September. In the first news, we have status of India's livestock sector. So in this news, we'll talk about the various potential of India's livestock sector and some of the issues that they are facing and what measures the government has undertaken to realize the full potential of the livestock sector. Second news is about NCRB Prison Statistics India 2023 report. So here we'll talk about the status of the prison in India and the challenges that they face and some of the measures that have been taken to address their problems. Third news, fund for red sanders under access and benefit sharing. So in this, we'll talk about the whole concept of access and benefit sharing under the National Biodiversity Act. And then we'll also talk about some of the other international provisions as well. In the fourth news, we'll talk about 10 years of adopting sustainable development goals. So here we'll talk about some of the important milestones in this journey and some of the initiatives that India has taken to realize the sustainable development goals. Right? And in the fifth news, we'll talk about NCRB releases Crime in India 2023 report. So here we'll talk about some of the major trends with respect to crime in India, and especially we'll look into some of the important stakeholders and the crime that they are getting or they are being perpetrated against them. Then in the last news, we'll talk about USA's 20-point plan to end Israel-Gaza conflict. So here we'll talk about some of the initiatives or some of the plan that the President Donald Trump has proposed to end the ongoing war and what could be some of the ramification of this. Then in the places news, we have Vietnam and also we'll discuss some quick updates. So let's start with the very first news. Here we have Union Minister highlights India's dairy and livestock sector leadership at FAO Global Conference in Rome. So in the GS Paper 3 Indian Economics section or GS Paper 3 section, we have a section of agriculture. So within agriculture, it is not just limited to crops and farms. It is also extended to animal rearing, etc. So this topic is explicitly mentioned as part of the syllabus, economics of animal rearing. So therefore, this part becomes important. Now, with respect to the livestock sector, what exactly are the major dimensions that we need to look into? So the first thing that we need to look into is the potential that this has. Second, we need to look into the challenges that it faces. And third, we need to look into some of the measures that the government has taken. So in terms of the potential, it has huge potential with respect to the employment generation. Second, it has huge potential with respect to livelihood or income diversification, because you know that the cropping sector can only be sustainable or is only there for a specific section or for a specific season. You have Rabi season, you have Kharif season, etc. So agriculture cannot be sustained for entire year. It is only seasonal in nature. So in that situation, livestock sector can be utilized. By the way, livestock sector basically means rearing of animals. It also means domestication and milk sector, and it including the meat sector. So all these basically products that we get from animals essentially will come under the livestock sector. The other important aspect of or potential of livestock sector is that it will help us in getting nutritional security. And the fourth one would be that it also empowers women, because women is essentially they play a very important role as far as livestock sector is concerned. So these are some of the potential. If you look at some of the data related to this, in terms of the economic contribution, they contribute almost a third of agricultural gross value added. And in terms of the national GDP, they have a contribution of around 5.5%. Then in terms of India's ranking in several of the indices, such as in milk production, India is number 1. In production of eggs, India is 2nd. And in terms of meat, it is number 5th. India is world's largest livestock population. So India has this. Then when it comes to livelihood role, it supports 2/3 of the rural household. It provides nutrition, income, and employment security. So this is the potential or the significance of the livestock sector. But apart from this potential, we also have several issues. And one of the most important issue that the livestock sector face is that it is very less productive in nature, which means that despite having world's largest livestock population, our productivity is very less. Secondly, we also have problems with respect to the fodder that we provide to our livestock. So again, the fodder is also not that nutritious, and again, the coverage is also very less compared to the population. So if you look at the data, we have the 15% of the the livestock population, but in terms of fodder it is just 5%. So there's a significant mismatch here. Then there is problem with respect to the veterinary care system. So there are several diseases that the livestock sector faces, such as FMD, such as brucellosis. So again, these even though we have the infrastructure, but it is not that much scaled. So there are problems with respect to all these aspects. So we have the concern with respect to feed and fodder deficit. So we have already discussed 5% of land under fodder versus 15% of world's livestock. Insurance coverage is very less. It is barely 1% of the livestock are insured. Third, there are high disease burden, which include loss from hemorrhagic septicemia, foot and mouth disease, brucellosis, etc. And then there are antimicrobial resistance. India is fourth globally in antibiotic use in animals, which raises the health and export risk. And lastly, it is also there is underutilization of fund, productivity is low. So these are some of the challenges. So government has from time to time ushered in various reforms and various initiatives. So the flagship initiative is the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. So here it is for conserving and upgrading the indigenous, or indigenous basically means those which breeds are from India, through selective breeding. Now, why this is done? It's done because earlier we had this policy of breeding with foreign specimens. So essentially that was good for productivity, but these species were not able to withstand India's tropical climate. So indigenous species are more sustainable and suitable for India's climate. They're also better suited, their milk is also better suited for India's population. So these are some of the reasons why Rashtriya Gokul Mission is very important. Secondly, as we saw that only 1% of the livestock is vaccinated, so we are insured. So it is essential that we take some preventive measure through livestock vaccination program. Under this, we provide 1.2 billion doses annually. Third, we have animal husbandry infrastructure development, within which 3.5 billion US dollar fund is there to support investment in dairy, in breeding, in feed plants and meat processing. And lastly, we also have Matris and A-Help. So basically, Matris train the local person to deliver breeding services, and A-Help empowers rural women to contribute to animal health delivery. So these are some of the measures which are currently ongoing, but we still need to go a long way before this becomes more productive for us. So what can be some of the way ahead for this? First, we need to declare livestock a special sector, which will give them a proper attention and resources. As of now, we'll see that most of the resources is provided to the agriculture or the farming sector, but we need to ensure that the non-farming, especially the horticulture sector and even the livestock sector, need to get more recognition, more popularity. Second, we need to promote livestock-based integrated farming systems so that there is a huge diversification of income, there's supplement of income. At the same time, it will also lead to nutritional security. Breed improvement programs can be done, whereby we can include state dominant indigenous breeds from all the states of the country to prevent their replacement by high yielding breeds. Other recommendations are we can create national fodder mission that will increase the land under the fodder coverage, because we have the severe mismatch between fodder and the livestock population. Then we can expand livestock insurance, etc. So these are some of the reforms which can be taken to promote and prevent and protect the livestock sector in the country. If you look at the previous year question, they had asked a very broad question with this. Livestock rearing has a big potential for providing non-farm employment and income in rural areas. Discuss suggesting suitable measures to promote this sector in India. So we have discussed all these aspects in this particular topic. So you can also use the recent development and add to this. Next topic, National Crime Records Bureau's NCRB Prison Statistics 2023 report. And this is particularly important from the perspective of governance, because in order to make policies, we need data. We need to know where is the lacuna, and then we can take certain reforms initiative regarding this. And prison becomes very important topic, because ultimately, if you look at human rights violation, most of the human rights violation basically happen at the level of prison. So it is important that we understand the nuances and the challenges that the prisoner faces and what can be done to improve their status. So if you look at some of the challenges that prisoners face, the most important challenge that they face is that there is overcrowding of prison. So even though capacity is say 100, but the people or the prisoners who will be there will be 120 or 130. So the utilization will be significantly higher. So that is the number one challenge with respect to prison. The second is that the composition of the population of the prisoner is such that there are more under trials, or at least 2/3 or 3/4 of the population in prison are under trials, which means that they are yet to be convicted, but because they do not have enough money for bail, they are still languishing in the prison. So that is another problem. Then there are problems with respect to infrastructure, problems with respect to issues of hygiene, issues with respect to vulnerable section like women. So they're not getting adequate support. So all these could be some of the challenges with respect to the prison system. Now, why this was in news? Because recently a committee had given a report in terms of reforming prison, and this was constituted way back in 2018. So Supreme Court had constituted a 3-member committee led by Justice retired Amitav Rao to look at the issues involving jail reforms and to make recommendations on several aspects. And basically this takes data from the NCRB's prison statistics data. So this data basically provides an insight into the chronic state of distress and all these aspects with respect to prison. And essentially, it propels us to take necessary urgent governance reform. So in terms of the problems, we have already discussed that there is chronic overcrowding, which is critically high at 120.8% or around 121%. Then there is problem with respect to under trial crisis, which is that almost 75% or 73% or 3/4 of the prisoners are under trial. Then there is problem of mental health and deaths, where there is rising cases of unnatural deaths. In fact, if you look at the number of suicide cases, it is the highest number of unnatural cause of death in the prison. And this is basically supported by the NCRB data as well. And largely it is due to the neglect of inmates' psychological well-being. Then there is problem with female inmates vulnerability, which so women are basically 4.1% of the inmates or the prisoners. They face inadequate gender sensitive facilities, limited hygiene access, and insufficient medical access. Now, what initiatives have been undertaken for the prison reforms? First, there is Model Prison and Correctional Services Act 2023. So it marks a paradigm shift. How? From a punitive colonial framework to a reformative, rehabilitative, and rights-based prison. So it's prison system. So essentially, this is a very good approach where prison is not seen as a way for punishment, but as a system of rehabilitation. Second, under trial review committees. So essentially, we have district level bodies established by Supreme Court to review the cases of under trial prisoners and recommend actions like release or bail. Within this, you can also take up types of bails or paroles or furlough. So in fact, UPSC asked a question between the difference between parole and furlough. Then e-prisons project, which is a centralized digital platform for prisoner records, improving transparency, monitoring, and efficiency. Then you have a faster system, which is fast and secure transmission of electronic records of the Supreme Court. Apart from that, you can also mention several of the Supreme Court judgments that have also enhanced the rights of the under trial. You can also mention the initiative of Article 39A and the tribunals, right? ADR mechanism. Then what can be some of the way forward? So this is provided by the Justice Amitav Rao Committee. So first, they have mentioned that there needs to be a speedy trial, for which we need to have special fast-track courts to handle petty offences and cases pending for over 5 years. Second, there is a need for use of video conferencing. Why? It will help in production of senior citizen and sick prisoners in the courts. Third, gender-sensitive reforms. It is very important that there is an exclusive women's prison and medical wards for female inmates, and especially formulation of welfare scheme for the transgender population. And lastly, there shall be some mandatory segregation of under trials, convicts, and first time offenders, because if you put the first time offenders with the hardened criminals, it is likely that they will pick up on certain skills and attributes of the hardened criminals. So the point is that we need to prevent the crimes from happening, and then we need to rehabilitate these people. So it is essential that based on the nature of crime, there shall be some sort of segregation. So this is all about the second topic. If you look at question that came from this topic, UPSC asked a question in 2023. So take a look at this and let me know what would be the right answer. Third topic, National Biodiversity Authority sanctions fund for red sanders conservation. So this is basically part of GS paper 3, environment. So this is red sander, and the concept that is important here is access and benefit sharing. So this access and benefit sharing mechanism is what is important. So let me explain really briefly what exactly is the concept of access and benefit sharing. So in order to harness some of the biological resources, it is important that not only there shall be some conservation, but also the benefit shall be transformed or transmitted to the people who are affected in that area. For example, you may be aware about the system of that we have in the mineral rich area. Government provides the provision of DMF, so that even if some industrial body comes and mine in that region, it should not deprive those people who are living in that area of the benefits of the mining proceeds. So this idea of access and benefit sharing is also taken from the same principle, that the local population should have some stake in the growth process, especially when it comes to access of bioresources, biological resources. So with this basically is from or taken from the concept of Convention of Biological Diversity, right, of 92. So Convention of Biological Diversity has 3 areas: conservation, so conservation of biological resources, then sustainable reuse, and thirdly, equitable sharing of benefit. So these were the 3 aspects of Convention of Biological Diversity. But what happened was these 2 elements were done in an organized manner. These implementation were fine, but when it comes to the third part, this implementation was not done properly. Therefore, another protocol was signed, which was called as Nagoya Protocol. So Nagoya Protocol was signed or was established essentially for providing a legal implementation or a legal mechanism for equitable resources sharing with all the communities. So that was basically the reason why this, and within this there is access and benefit sharing mechanism was established. Now within this, what has happened, that we have an organization called NBA. So we'll talk about what exactly is the implementation structure when it comes to India. So as per this news, within this, what has happened is that NBA has aims to raise 1 lakh red sander saplings for distribution to farmers. So here, what you can see that it is going to be distributing to farmers in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Essentially, it is an example of access and benefit sharing. So basically, benefit sharing, equitable distribution of resources, right? So this essentially we have discussed that CBD comes from 1992 and its Nagoya Protocol. So we have discussed there are three objectives: conservation, sustainable use, and equitable distribution of resources. And the Nagoya Protocol essentially legitimizes the equitable sharing of resources. When it comes to India, it is done in India. It is done through Biological Diversity Act of 2000. So in India, it is done through this, and it creates three tier of infrastructure. So at central level, we have National Biodiversity Authority. At the state level, we have state biodiversity boards, and at the district level, we have DMCs, or district biodiversity management committees, BMCs, at the local level. So there are three level of structure, and essentially the access and benefit sharing part is done or at the mandate of NBA, which has recently provided for the benefit sharing with respect to red sanders, right? And NBA is headquartered at Chennai, and SBB is composed at the state level, and biodiversity management committees at the local level. Some of the example of this is Kani tribe in Kerala. Traditional knowledge about a medicinal plant was used to develop a drug, Jeevani, right? So here it was drug. So there was this access was done. So access was done, then benefit was also shared with the Kani tribe as well, which essentially led to the win-win situation. So here, if you look at red sanders, what exactly, or it is also called as red sandalwood. So it is native to the southern eastern ghats of Andhra Pradesh, grows in dry deciduous forest between 150 to 900 meters altitude. So maybe if you have watched Pushpa 2 or Pushpa, you would have understood how these smuggling happens of sandalwood, used in fine furniture, musical instrument, Ayurveda, and yields a natural red dye. Conservation status is it's an endangered, it's given endangered status, and under sites it is listed in the appendix 2. It's protected under Schedule 4 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. And what are the threats? Illegal logging and smuggling. Fine. If you look at the PYQs, UPSC had asked a very generic question with respect to biodiversity. How does biodiversity vary in India? So you can talk about all the biodiversity, different hotspots that we have in the country. Then how is Biological Diversity Act 2002 helpful in conservation of flora and fauna? So here you can talk about the three-tier structure of the biodiversity framework that we have. And then you can talk about the measures that they take for equitable sharing of resources. Next news, 10 years of adopting UN Sustainable Development Goals. And this can be a topic which is there in GS paper 2, social issues. So in social issues, we study about development with respect to health, with respect to education, and skill development, etc. We also study about, especially when it comes to GS paper 1, we study about the Indian society and the salient features of Indian society and impact of globalization. So here we need to understand the whole concept of sustainable development goals and what exactly is the status of India with respect to the success, or in terms of implementation of SDG, where do we stand with respect to implementation. So back in 2000, MDGs were introduced, Millennium Development Goals, right? So within this, there were 8 goals, and it was supposed to be operational from 2000 to 2015. Once this Millennium Development Goals target or period was over, the international community decided to start with Sustainable Development Goals. Now, there was a difference between MDGs and SDGs. So, Millennial Development Goals were largely based on top-down approach, while SDGs is based on bottom-up approach. Millennium Development Goals largely were meant for the developing countries, but the Sustainable Development Goals were meant not just for the developing countries, but also for the developed countries. Third difference was the Millennium Development Goal essentially targeted the social sector or very pressing developing concerns such as health, education. But the mandate of SDGs can be considered to be broader than MDGs. Why? Because not only it caters to the pressing developmental challenges, but it also concerns with climate change, it also concerns with governance, etc. So we can say that the mandate of the Millennium Development Goals was narrow, and the mandate of SDGs were broad in nature. So these were some of the differences that we can understand for a contextual understanding of sustainable development goals. In fact, if you look at the goals as well, this will also make you clear. In fact, I would strongly suggest you to memorize these goals as much as possible. And in case you are not able to memorize, just have this framework that SDGs 1 to 6 essentially they talk about some developmental aspects. For example, SDG 1 will talk about poverty, zero poverty. 2 will talk about zero hunger. 3 will talk about health. Fourth will talk about education. 5 will be about women empowerment or gender equality. And 6 will be about water and sanitation, wash. So 1 to 6 is about development. Then 7 to 12 essentially is about economic growth or sustainable economic growth. Starting off at the 7th sustainable development, 7 is about clean energy. Very important for any development process. You need energy, right? Then 8th, you require economic growth, decent work. So decent work is very important for meaningful life. Then 9th is about uh, industry, infrastructure, and innovation, right? So this is about sustainable development goal 9. 10th is about measures need to taken to reduce inequality. In fact, UPSC this year itself asked about HDI, inequality adjusted HDI. So inequality reduction is very important, especially in the light of changes in developmental model and the growth of artificial intelligence. Then 11th, we can talk about uh, sustainable cities, and 12 is about sustainable consumption plus production. So it's 7 to 12 goals are basically for what? For, so this is for development, this is for economic growth in a sustainable manner. And from 13 to 17, if you look at it, it is essentially about actions on climate. So goal number 13 is about what? Taking climate action. So they have given directly. 14 is about life below water. 15 is about life above land. 16 is about uh, peace, justice, and institutions, strong institutions. Because if you do not have a strong institution, you will not be able to take all those measures, right? Not be able to go for global governance. And 17 is about partnership. Now, interestingly, the partnership here is not just with respect to government at the government level. Here there are two approaches. First is whole of government approach, and the second one is whole of society approach. Okay, so whole of government means that we need to have partnership with international level government should be partners. Then at the national level, central government, state government, local government should be partners in development. So they should work as if they are a team, along with the spirit of competitiveness and collaboration. Okay, then with respect to whole of society, we need to understand that government is not the only player with respect to governance. We have other players such as social institutions, including the civil society, including NGOs, etc. So we need to take their opinion also into consideration, because to to get or to achieve these goals, it cannot happen only with the help of government. We need the help of entire society. So this is all about the sustainable development goals. If you look at some of the important way in which India has integrated SDGs into its development planning. So first, India has started pioneering SDG India Index, which basically ranks the states and UTs using public data to encourage improvement through competition. So India has adopted competitive and collaborative federalism or cooperative federalism. So using SDG India Index is a very good way of using this competitive spirit. Second, it is about localization of SDGs, which basically means that through Panchayat Advancement Index, village council, it can be the developmental needs can be localized at the panchayat level or at the very basic level. Then institutionalize the SDGs. Several states are mapping budgets worth billions of dollars to SDG targets, including health, education. For example, there's a target to reduce the MMRs. So state will be taking actions to ensure that their MMRs are corresponding to what is mentioned as part of the SDG goals. Then running specific programs like aspirational district program for the aspirational district, and adopting whole of society approach, right, including everyone as part of developmental paradigm. Then engaging with civil society, academia and private sector. And we also have the voluntary national reviews of the projects that we have undertaken with respect to implementation of the sustainable development goals. So what is important from the topic of SDG is that we understand the whole concept of SDG. We also understand all the numbers like SDG 1 to 17. At least we should know the goals, and there are 169 targets. So we don't need to know all the targets, but at least for some critical areas like MMR, like education, we should have some idea that what should be the gross enrollment rate, what should be this and that, right? So that you should have some basic idea about the goals and the targets. Now, India's progress is essentially good. If you look at SDG 1, over 35 million people have moved out of multi-dimensional poverty. With respect to SDG 2, we have zero hunger. Prevalence of undernourishment is 13.7%. SDG 3, good health and well-being, our MMR has declined to 80.5 from 130. Now you tell me, what is the target of MMR as per SDG? Then SDG 4, quality education, our primary enrollment rate is now 99.9%, right? So these are some of the areas where we have done really well, but there are certain areas where we still need a lot of effort. And this could be in terms of water and sanitation, in terms of gender equality, in terms of climate action, etc. So we can take certain things here or certain initiative as well. Next news. National Crime Records Bureau NCRB releases Crime in India Report 2023. Just like this SDG topic, it is also part of both Indian society and social justice. So here what is important is that they have given certain statistics with respect to crime, which means that there is an increase in overall crime. Crime rate has increased, one crime every 5 seconds. Okay, so this is the startling data that they have given. But what is interesting here is that even though the number of crime has increased, the earlier forms of crime has reduced and new forms of crime has started to emerge. So earlier we had violent crimes like rape, dowry, deaths, etc. They have reduced in number, but now we are witnessing more and more crime in cyber and urban crimes. In terms of cyber crime, we have more, it has increased more than 31.2%, and it is mostly fraud. This exposes the weak cyber hygiene that we have or the protocols that we follow for cyber security, and especially in the advent of rise of digitization and digital practices by people. Then in terms of metro, it has increased by 10.1%, 10.6%, and with Delhi is witnessing the highest number of cases, and it is attributed to two factors: urban stress plus better reporting, people, because people are more aware and more conscious of their rights, so they are also reporting it more, therefore the number also reflects the same. In case with respect to the crime against vulnerable sections, we can say that with respect to women, there's a marginal increase, 0.7%, where domestic cruelty is the most important or the most significant contributor of crimes, which is around 30%. which reflects the entrenched patriarchy or the way in which women are treated in the household. Then, with respect to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, the crime against scheduled tribe have marginally increased, so very little change here. But when it comes to scheduled tribe, the crime rate has significantly improved. And this is particularly attributed to the Manipur ethnic conflict between Meiteis and the Kukis, right? So basically, this is the conflict which has undertaken, which has increased the crime rate to 28.8%. With respect to children, there is a significant increase in crime, I would say 9.2%, because largely it is under POCSO, which reflects both high vulnerability plus better reporting. If you look at some of the details about NCRB, so it was established in 1986 on the recommendation of Tandon Committee, National Police Commission 1977 to 1981, and MHA's Task Force 1985. It is under the Ministry of Home Affairs. What are the key functions of NCRB? It functions as the repository of information. So it has the information on what crime and criminals to assist the investigator in resolution of crimes. Second, it coordinates with this crime and criminal tracking network system, CCTNS. Third, it publishes crime or national crime statistics, that is crime in India, accidental deaths and suicide. And then we have already discussed that they also publish prison statistics as well. So UPSC asked a question on why suicide among young women is increasing in Indian society. It asked in 2023. Now, UPSC is not very much interested in knowing to what extent you understand, you know the data, but you should be able to provide a trend on the basis of the data. So, for example, if the crimes against scheduled tribes have increased, so what can be the possible reasons for that, right? So, here also you need to analyze all the challenges that women, particularly young women, faces, which basically compels them to take their own life. Next news: USA's plan to end Israel-Gaza conflict. Very important news as far as GS Paper 2 IR is concerned. And here, if you look at the news that USA recently released a 20-point peace plan to end the Israel-Gaza conflict. And this recent conflict has been going on for over 2 years. Over 2 years, began with Hamas's Operation Al-Aqsa storm against Israel, I think in October 2023. However, the origin of the war go more than a century, right? So what are the highlights of the plan? So there are certain I would say that's a very balanced plan, because it has certain responsibilities and some sort of important thing for both all the stakeholders. So with respect to the Palestinians or the Hamas, it asks Hamas to immediately cease fire, and secondly, it asks them to release all the hostages. Third, it wants the Israeli defense forces or Israeli forces to ensure that they recognize the sovereignty of Palestine and do not annex any more of the territory of Gaza or Hamas, right? Then the first is with respect to Hamas, or sorry, with respect to Palestine. Second, with respect to Israel. And thirdly, there is also initiative for the development of the region, which will be developed with respect to the international donor agencies. And there will be a transitionary force as well, which will oversee the entire implementation of the plans, right? So these are the ways in which it is going to be implemented. And in fact, a lot of leaders have also congratulated US on this plan. In fact, PM Modi has also written about this and supported this 20-point plan for the resolution of Israel Palestine issue, okay, or conflict. Then this comes in the backdrop of several countries' initiative to recognize the state of Palestine. You may understand, or you may know, that there is a resolution recently passed by Saudi Arabia and France for recognition of the state of Palestine, and several countries have already accepted the state or recognized the state of Palestine as a state, right? So this essentially comes, or it is basically a follow up of the two state nation that is proposed way back by UN in 1948. So in 1948, when the state of Israel was being created, it was also decided to create the state of Palestine. But because of several reasons, because of the fact that Palestine did not accept the region of which they would want to get the territory for a state, and because of internal differences, because of lack of united phase or united consensus, they could not decide on accepting that portion as a state. Therefore, the war has, or their dispute have started to manifest for a very long period of time, and now it is high time that it gets, or it stopped. So if you look at some of the historical context, it is very essential that you know some of the key terms such as Balfour Declaration. So within this, Britain supported a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Tensions were there because Jews were in minority. So this is the region, entire region was called Palestine earlier. So in 1948, the state of Israel was created, and but it was not accepted by the Arab state or the Palestinians, and it led to multiple Arab-Israel wars. Particularly in 1961, Israel occupied the West Bank. This is West Bank territory, and this is Gaza Strip, right? So this is this is the area which is currently Israel is launching an attack against the. So this is under the ownership, or it is under the control of an organization called Hamas. So in general, you can say that the Gaza Strip is under the control of Hamas, which is essentially a militant organization. And Western countries do not like this organization. They have, a lot of countries have already recognized this as a terrorist organization, and this, along with some other other terrorist organization, were the one which led to attack or led attack to Israel on October 23, 2023, right? October 2023, right? And then this is West Bank. This is another area which is PLA, Palestinian Liberation as Authority. So this is mostly moderate. So this is moderate, and this is extremist. Again, I'm very much simplifying this. This is much more complicated than what I'm saying, but this is the whole thing. So this is Israel, and if you look at the neighbors, you have Lebanon, you have Syria, and this is Jordan, and towards this side you have Egypt. So these are the countries. In fact, UPSC also asked a map-based question on the location of this, right? So this is 1961 war. So it occupied West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, and also Golan Heights, which were there in Syria. Then in 1973 Yom Kippur War, it led to Camp David Accords, and as per Camp David Accord, Egypt became the first country in the this area, in the Middle East area, to recognize Israel, and Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula. Then currently Israel retains control over West Bank, and a Palestinian statehood currently is unresolved. Maybe in the UN General Assembly debate or General Assembly resolution, it can be taken up. Okay, so this is the history of the conflict. So take a look at this question. This question is about the whole effort of Israel and other countries with respect to war and peace thing. So here, the first statement, Israel has established diplomatic relations with some Arab state, which is correct, because you know already about Egypt, and also with respect to the Abraham Accord, some other countries such as UAE and Bahrain or Morocco also recognized Israel as a state. So statement 1 is correct. Secondly, the Arab Peace Initiative, this was initiated or mediated by Saudi Arabia, was signed by Israel and Arab League. This is not correct, because there were certain provisions which where Israel was not agreeing with. Therefore, it is yet to be manifested. So he can say that only one statement is correct. Okay, so now we'll talk about place in news. In the place in news, we'll be discussing Vietnam. And why we'll be discussing Vietnam? Because Typhoon Bua Loi has caused widespread destruction in Vietnam. Vietnam has closed its airports and other infrastructure because it's preparing for this typhoon. So this is why we need to take a look into the uh, location aspects of Vietnam. So if you look at the map of Vietnam, this is it is located in the Southeast Asia. It's an Indo-China peninsula, and with respect to the boundaries, it has China towards the north, then it has Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia here, and the capital is Hanoi, right? And if you look at the maritime boundary, it has South China Sea and Gulf of Thailand and Gulf of Tonkin. And interestingly, UPSC once asked a question on government type as well. So, what kind of government does Vietnam has? So, Vietnam has a socialist republic, which is a one-party system. Interestingly, this is very much similar to what is there in China as well. So, it is dominated by the Communist Party of Vietnam. If you look at the geographical features, what is the climate? Tropical monsoon, just like in India, for majority of the time. Then major river is Mekong River in the north and Red River in the south. So there are two rivers, Mekong and Red River, and both river form delta while draining into the South China Sea. Okay. Now let's discuss some quick updates. And in the quick update, first thing that we'll discuss is about postal ballot. Now, why this is important? Because ECI, in its notification, has mentioned that the penultimate round of EVM counting shall be taken up only after complete counting of postal ballots. So, understand that counting of votes by ECI takes in two process or two ways or two stages. So, first stage is two stages counting. So, first stages is where the postal ballots are counted, and second one is where EVM ballots or EVM votes are counted, right? So this is generally taken done at 8 a.m. and this is done at 8:30 a.m. So before counting of EVMs, generally the postal ballots are counted and verified. But recently, the Election Commission of India has included a lot of other members as well in the domain of postal ballots. Therefore, it is likely that the timing of this will not be able to count the entire postal ballots. Therefore, what they have suggested that the round of EVM, the counting will not take place unless the second last round of EVM counting is taken up. Again, that is not that important development, but what is important from this news is the idea of postal ballot. So postal ballot allows voters to cast their votes on an electronically received postal ballot, which avoids the need to visit the polling station manually. And it is governed under Conduct of Election Rules 1961 and RPA or Representation of People's Act 1951. Very important. Now, which are the kind of people who are allowed to go for ballot vote or postal ballots? First is the service voters. So service voters can be part of army or armed forces or central armed police forces, etc. So these are service voters. What are special voters? Special voters can be high functionaries such as president, such as PM, and their spouses would be part of special voters. Third, absentee voter. Absentee voter would be seniors above 85, persons with disability, etc. Fourth, those who are under preventive detention, they also get the right to vote as well through postal ballot. And fifth, election duty personnel. So these people are given the right to use postal ballot. So this is what is important from this particular news. Next, Sahyog portal. So Sahyog portal was in news. Why? Because X, which was formerly known as Twitter, has decided to appeal the Karnataka High Court judgment upholding the Sahyog portal. So, what is the background? So, Sahyog portal is a portal which provides a centralized platform for various authorized government agency to coordinate real time with digital platform. So we have an IT Act of 2000, and in this act there is a concept of limited liability to the intermediaries. So intermediaries basically means these social media sites like Twitter, like Facebook, Instagram, etc. So imagine if someone posts a very defamatory or very contentious thing on their social media. So where does the liability lie? Should it be lying with the uh, user, or should it be lying with the intermediary? So essentially, Section 79 says that it is called a safe harbor provision. So safe harbor provision means that the liability of any such criminal content which is inciting violence, or is it defamatory, or it is very much objectionable in nature, or whatever it is as decided by the courts, right? So it basically provides or gives immunity to the uh, intermediaries, right? At the same time, Section 79 3 clause 3 subclause B says that if a government agency has provided the intermediary a list of posts that needs to be removed, then it has to be removed by the intermediary. And this was something that Twitter did not like, and therefore it approached the Allahabad High Court to remove this Sahyog portal, because Sahyog portal was something that would enable the government officials to coordinate and provide a list of all those objectionable material or content to be removed from the intermediaries. So this is what is contested here, and therefore uh, Twitter has, or X now wants to challenge this, because it says that it is going to be against freedom of speech and expression governed under Article 19(1)(a), and it was also upheld under the Shreya Singhal case of 2015, where the Supreme Court uh, nullified Section 66A of IT Act, saying that it has a chilling effect on fundamental speech, right of speech and expression. Okay, but the government has claimed that since Twitter or X is not a citizen, so Article 19(1)(a) does not apply here. Also, that these reasonable whatever restriction are being done is under Article 19 Clause 2. So again, the claim that government is going or is against freedom of speech as also does not hold true. So the court as of now has accepted these judgments provided by the government, and therefore has upheld the Sahyog portal. So this is what is important from this particular news. Next, India Bhutan. So what is important here is that India has provided or announced two cross border projects uh, to link Bhutan. What are these two cross border railway project? One is 69-kilometer Kokrajhar and Jelepu line, which is Kokrajhar is from Assam and Jelepu is in Bhutan, and the second one 20-kilometer Banarhat, which is in West Bengal, to Samtse, which is in Bhutan. So the significance of this lies from the fact that Jelefu is a mindful city, right? So this provides opportunity for India to go for or to get sustainable economic development for both countries. Okay, and the significance of Samste is that it will provide connectivity, as it is a major industrial town that will promote trade and economy. So these are some of the development with respect to this news. Second, next news is about Wassenaar arrangement. So some experts believe that so what is Wassenaar agreement? Wassenaar agreement is essentially one of the export control regime. So you may know that there are other export control regimes such as Australia Group. So Australia Group is for prevention of biological and chemical weapons. Then you have a missile control treaty, or MCTR, that is for prevention of missiles. And then there is a nuclear suppliers group which prevents nuclear supplies. or export of nuclear supplies to other countries. But what is more important is Wassenaar Agreement. So Wassenaar Agreement, essentially it prevents export of dual use technology. Okay, and why it was in news? Because sometimes one technology can be used for developmental purpose, but it can also be used for some defense purpose or security purpose or from some destructive purpose. So recently Microsoft's was in news because its software called Azure was used by the Israelis to target the Palestinian population, right? So even software has come as part of dual use technology, okay? And the problem here is that software, when you talk about software as a service, now it is being provided at the cloud level, not at a physical level, right? So therefore, it is very difficult to monitor this software as a service in terms of Wassenaar Agreement. So that is why it has been in news, right? So if you look at the membership, Wassenaar is in Netherlands. It is an export control regime established in 1996. Purpose is to promote transparency and responsibility in the transfer of conventional arms and dual use goods and technologies. It has 42 members, including India, which joined in 2017. Anant Shastra Air Defense System. What is important here is that India has awarded this contract to Bharat Electronics Limited (BEL) for development. Now, what is this? It is an air defense system. That is one thing that is important. Second, it is an effort of indigenization of defense services or defense products. That is why it is important. And it is a quick reaction surface to air missile, which means that it has a very limited target, which is around 30 kilometer, and it is going to be integrated with MRSAM, Akash, Spider, and Sudarshan S-400 system, and it is going to be stationed along western and northern borders. Next, gold tailings. What is gold tailing? Gold tailing is essentially some waste that remains after gold extraction. So what India is going to do is India is exploring some new ways to boost domestic gold production by extracting it from gold tailings. Okay, so what are the hazards associated with it? It includes acid mine draining, heavy metal leaching, etc. And with respect to India's status in gold, India produces or India's gold production was around 1.62 tons, and reserves is around 880 tons in 2025. And India is the world's second biggest gold consumer after China. So UPSC also asked a question with respect to the export, that what kind of gold that India exports globally, and there was also a question with respect to the whole reserves that India has. So it was a factual question, but it basically came from topics like this. Then Northern White Rhino. So this is in news because Mumbai-based docu-series, the Resurrection Quest, secured the prestigious Gold Dolphin at 16th Cannes Corporate Media and TV Award. Northern White Rhino IVF was one of the events captured in the 4-part series. So what are Northern White Rhino? They are subspecies of the white rhinos. And once widespread across Central Africa, they are known for their massive size, broad mouth, and 2 horns. So in general, in India, we have 1-horned rhino, but they have 2 horns. IUCN status, they are critically endangered, and they are also considered to be possibly extinct in the wild. And only 2 females remain globally, residing in Kenya. Conservation efforts are advanced technologies like in vitro fertilization (IVF), using cryopreserved sperm and surrogate southern white rhino mothers. Next, Bathukama festival. So it is celebrated in Telangana. It created 2 Guinness World Record. So what is it? It is a flower festival celebrated by the women folk of Telangana and some parts of Andhra Pradesh. And when it is celebrated during the Durga Puja or Navratri, and it involves preparation of Bathukama. So what is Bathukama? Come back to life, mother. It includes traditional art of flower arrangement using seasonal flowers with medical or medicinal values. It is dedicated to goddess Parvati, and it is declared as the Telangana state festival. Right? So this is all about news today. I hope it was interesting and useful for you. Make sure that you also attempt these questions and provide your answer in the comment section. Thank you and all the best.